your weekly horoscope with Jerry and Matt.
Pardon me, do you have any Grey Poupon?
Hey, good evening, horror fans. Welcome to the weekly horoscope. I'm your host, Jerry, here with my partner, Matt, and we're glad you're joining us again this week. We have an interesting topic for you. Today, we're going to talk about Eat the Rich. And what we mean by that is it's not a fine dining establishment for cannibals. You know, it's a phrase that talks about class conflict and the lower class and the poor rising up and combating the rich, which this is a pretty topical conversation if you consider the era we're in today.
Yeah, one of the propositions for the Communist Manifesto is that history is to be looked at as an economic class struggle. But it's absurd to make the assumption that you can identify someone's moral worth through their economic standing. You know, so I think at the core concept of Eat the Rich, it's nothing but malevolence and horror.
Yeah, and you look at the movies. Both of the movies that we're going to talk about tonight are pretty modern, pretty new. And if you look at the kind of the climate we're in here in 2023, the wealth gap is growing at an exponential rate. Political unrest is unlike anything I've seen in my lifetime. The divisiveness and the hatred, and it's really, and you really kind of can see a reflection of society in the movies that we're talking about, even though they're fictional.
Yeah, and there's one thing I think we see a lot of that polarization nowadays is because I think we have more access to media than we have ever in the history of human civilization. So I think the perception of it is different. We do have more of an economic gap, but we also have more better standards of living for everyone. Like the title raised everyone up, right? Like more people around the world have electricity now than ever. We live on, I think in 1895, the average person lived on $1 a day. Right. And in the last 100 years, that's gone way up. So I think everyone's gotten more wealthy in the world in the last 100 years. So everything has gotten better for everybody.
Okay.
But
gotcha.
it's a whole nother conversation, right? That's a semester at school, talking about that,
Yeah, that could be years at school.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's a deep conversation, but we're here just to enjoy these movies.
For sure. I was going to say we don't ever want to get that deep. We like to
I don't want to. Yeah.
The our first movie that we're going to talk about tonight is called The Hunt, and it was originally scheduled to be released in the fall of 2019, and it was pushed. It was pulled out of release due to a couple back-to-back incidences of mass shootings, and they thought a movie of this subject would be maybe not the right time for it. And sadly, you can't really go too many weeks without a mass shooting nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
And I still think, I'm firmly in the camp of, separating fiction from reality.
Right.
And that's an important distinction to make. They always say, well, this guy watched all the Friday the 13th movies and then macheted his little brother. No, there was something wrong there before he watched the movies.
Right. He was unable to identify fantasy from reality, and there was some other catalyst that was going on that was going to happen. He was going to do something either way, right?
Millions and millions of people watched these movies and didn't do that. So the movies are not the fault here. So I'm never a subscriber to, well, this topic might be, I guess there are some, but, people have been shooting each other in movies since there's been movies. So
we started throwing rocks and then arrows, and then gunpowder was invented. Right, we've been at war with each other for a long time. So there's a part of that's human nature.
So released in 2020, directed by Craig Zobel, and there was a lot of controversy when this came out because it's political in nature, but it's such a twisted, comedic, over the top look. Yeah, I don't really look at it as one side over the other or Democrat, Republican. To an extent, everybody looks ridiculous at the end.
I think that's one of the things the movie does really well. I actually didn't think I was going to like this movie at all. Like when I saw the preview, I was like, oh no, like they're going to like slam agendas in your face. It's going to be real political. And I watched the movie and I thought it was hilarious. I laughed a lot. I thought it was funny.
Yeah.
It was well written. Like I was like, okay, this is entertaining. Like they're not really they're making it look like every person is a jerk. Like it's kind of like it's on every side. Like you said, you can't really tell like which side is who. Like left or right. It's kind of like on both sides. It's ambiguous, and I think they did that really well. And they just made it an entertaining movie.
Yeah, agree. We start with a group text that's going around. And it mentions a hunt at the manor. And it's kind of, one person says we're not supposed to mention the manor on text, and it kind of becomes nothing. And then we cut to a rich prick, for lack of a better term, on a private plane. And, he's just being really arrogant, really over the top. And a big redneck named Randy staggers out of the back, and he's clearly was drugged and woke up, and they're trying to deal with him. A doctor steps up and says, "Oh, let me take care of you. I'm a doctor," and he borrows the flight attendant's pen, and then stabs him in the neck with the pen, and it's spurting all across the plane. But Randy's not down. That's not enough to knock Randy out. He still fights, and he starts fighting back, and until one of our main antagonists, Athena, impales him straight in the eyeball. I know you love those, with her stiletto.
Yeah.
So it opens
then picks the stiletto out and then pulls the eyeball off. I was just like, wonderful.
The whole optic nerve comes out with it. Yeah. It was so it starts with just over the top ridiculousness, great blood and gore, and the establishment of, okay, these are the rich people. And they're obviously on their way to their hunt.
And that guy on the plane, that's Dennis from Always Sunny. And that's how I knew this movie was going to be funny. As soon as I saw him, I was like, oh, this is going to be a comedy. Yeah. So they drag the carcass into the room, and there's a bunch of unconscious people. And you get the vibe, the most dangerous game amplified with class, with social class thrown in here. We cut, a woman wakes up outdoors with a ball gag locked into her mouth, and she finds a bunch of other captives out in a field, and they're all staggering around with these gags in their mouth, and there's a large crate, and they're afraid to open the crate because everybody thinks it's going to blow up. But one guy opens the crate, and out comes one pig dressed in clothing, and there's a whole shelf, a whole cache of weapons. Yeah, and so it's immediately when you see the pig, like, oh, there's an allegory to Animal Farm here, and which they talk about,
later. Yeah, which I thought was kind of cool. But they they start grabbing all these weapons. There's also keys, so they can all unlock each other. And as they start getting the weapons, the first girl we saw, who we think that's going to be our main character that we identify with, her head explodes all over the guy she's talking to. And another woman runs, and she falls into a pit with spikes. And a guy helps
once for the first time.
Yeah, a guy helps her out, and they try to leave, and they step on a landmine.
Yeah,
and
he looks at the camera like Bugs Bunny, like Daffy Duck.
Yeah, his beak's blown sideways. They blow up, and now the upper half of this same woman goes back into the pit and is back on the spikes. And she's like, another guy tries to help her, and it's just her upper half now, and she's like just shoot me, and he's like, no, I can't do that. And she calls him a pansy or something, and
she calls him a snowflake. She calls him a snowflake, which is the political thing, right? So then she steals the gun. Stop being a snowflake, and takes the gun and shoots herself. I'm sitting there watching like, this is so over the top.
So we got head explosions, people on spikes, more explosions. Yeah. It was like, okay, wow.
It was like Hunger Games, like brought to the max.
Yeah. Four of our captives find their way to an outer edge, which is fenced with barbed wire. And they start to climb over. 3 of them make it, but the 4th is shot with arrows, and he turns to fight, and he's just body's riddled with arrows. And
Yeah,
then
he's
they
like, what is this Avatar stuff?
yeah. And then they come up and just drop a grenade next to his fallen body and just another explosion. Our three that escaped, they make it down to a mom and pop gas station. And it's very, the typical gas station in horror movies. It's a little rundown mom pop place, very Texas Chainsaw Massacre look type of place.
Yeah, it's dusty looking. Yeah.
Run by an old couple inside, and they are pleasant enough.
Mm-hmm.
And we quickly learn one of the woman picks up and starts eating a donut that she just steals. And
They're starving, right? So they're trying to steal rations, right? So they're just like, oh, it's food. Yeah.
And the donut's poisoned. She falls to the ground, foaming at the mouth. And we quickly find out the old couple is in on it. They release some toxic gas. They're wearing gas masks, and they kill them all.
And the woman, she says it's very out of pocket. She goes, will there be sugar after the revolution? And the one character is like, what are you talking about? That's a line from Animal Farm. That's what the horse says that. So it basically represents the people that are indifferent to the revolution. Like the horse was like, I don't care if the poor people die. Like, I just want to live my life. That's what the line meant. And that's why she says it. Like, it's kind of like a foreshadowing.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought the movie was clever. I really did.
It was very clever, actually. It was very clever. I recommend it. I started texting people, and I was like, you got to check this movie out. Yeah.
Had you seen it before?
Never. I haven't seen it. I'd seen the trailer, and I just kind of made me roll my eyes like, oh, God. And then I'm glad I watched it. It's a gem.
Yeah, it sure is. Then we see the old couple in radio communication with the other hunters, and they tell them that there's a single unarmed female coming, and this is Crystal. She comes in and
known as Snowball at first, right? That's how we know her for the first half of the movie, Snowball.
Yeah. She comes in, and unlike the others who are freaking out and going crazy, she just goes up to the counter and orders a pack of cigarettes. And they're like, okay, and they give her cigarettes and they take her money. And in what I thought was a hilarious line, she jumps over the counter and just starts wailing on the old people, takes their gun and kills them both. And she says, they tell her they're in Arkansas, and she says, cigarettes are $6 in Arkansas, which I just thought was the most ridiculous.
But it's just like she's like, she has this like Jason Bourne ability where she's paying attention to all the ins and outs, and she's paying attention to the details and like how they're acting and like everything. She's paying attention to everything. So she has some kind of training that we don't know about, which is kind of obvious, right?
Yeah,
and
she's a
badass. Yeah,
I was just gonna say she becomes the badass. Yeah. We thought we were with the first girl, and she blew up immediately. Now we're with Crystal, and so she goes outside, and there's an old beat up truck, and it's wired. If you open the door, it explodes. It's got an Arkansas license plate on it. Nice touch, but she peels back, and the whole bumper is fake. And she realizes they're in Croatia. A drone comes, and she's hiding from it. And all of a sudden, a guy appears, another captive named Gary, and he shoots it down. And she's like, "That was a bad move." And he's like, "Well, I didn't want it looking at us." Well, she said, "Well, now it knows exactly where we are." So
yeah, because we've shot it down, and they have our pinpoint from when they lost the reception. So
together they head down railroad tracks looking for a way out. And they board a freight train. One freight car is open. They make their way in, and of course there's refugees hiding in this car. And Gary is convinced they're actors. He says it's all fake. It's all a setup. It's all part of the whole thing.
He's like, I got a podcast. I tell people about this stuff.
Yeah, conspiracy podcast. Yeah. We can't make fun of people doing podcasts.
No, but it's just funny, the trope.
Yeah, as soon as he said it, I looked at my wife, and she just smiled at me. Like, hey, we're not selling any conspiracy theories here. We're just watching movies.
Right.
So the train gets stopped by the military, and we don't know where this is going, but we see they get everybody out, and they're trying to sort through the people, and we see that the lead refugee is fake. He starts talking in perfect English and like sticking his tongue out at Gary.
It's like Family Guy episode or something like.
Yeah, just like rubbing it in his face. And Gary grabs a grenade and tackles the guy and shoves it down his pants, and another guy explodes. So Crystal is then taken by the military. And when she gets there, they already have a captive named Don. And they send for a rep from the U.S. Embassy to pick him up, and it's going to take him to the embassy and get him out. And they're like, we don't have passports. We were abducted. We didn't mean to be here.
Right. We don't. They keep asking them for papers. Like, listen, we don't have papers. We were abducted. I don't know. We got knocked out 18 hours ago. We woke up here. What's going on?
Well, the rep from the U.S. Embassy, as they're driving in the car, he starts talking to him, and his speech becomes a little suspicious.
Yeah, his demeanor. Yeah, he's
acting funny.
He's asking questions and really, like, he's just like, so was it kind of personal that they took you? Like, why do you think they did it? Like, it's asking questions that an embassy guy wouldn't ask on the ride up.
What did you do that made him pick you?
Yeah.
And so Crystal detects he's a fake, and she double front kicks him right through the door out of the vehicle.
She uses the oh shit handle, and she leverages and kicks him. I was like, that's a good move.
And it was a double full kick in the chest. She wailed on that guy. He goes flying out of the car. She takes control and runs over his head. And
which I thought was awesome. This is when I realized I really liked the movie. When she decided to back up, I was like, yeah, get him. No, just keep going. And
Don is like, oh, what are you doing? He was our way out of here. And she's like, no, he was in on it. And they open the trunk, and there's a body inside of it. So
he asked. Yeah, I like that. It was a good line too. She's like, how do you know he was lying? And she looks up. She's like, everyone's lying. And I was like, all right, this is the character we stick with.
Yeah, for sure. Good choice to stick with too.
Yeah.
So there's a body in the trunk. So now we know that he definitely was part of it. We cut back to the rich folks are hiding out in a bunker, and they're having super annoying and douchey conversations, and you hate them all.
Yeah, they're holding guns. They're in the middle of hunting human beings, and they're trying to out progress each other with how they're talking. Like, you can't say that. You can't. That's not progress. You know what I mean? They're trying to, and it's just like, oh my god, yeah,
yeah. And this is where people would complain. Well, it's clear that they're making Democrats are the bad guys, and the common man is and I didn't get. You could get that if you wanted to.
I think they do it both ways. I think that's what's clever about it. Yeah.
It's like it's like a show that makes fun of everybody.
Yeah,
you can't be offended because they make fun of everybody.
This makes fun of
take
everyone.
It one side. Yeah, these people were caricatures. They were completely over the top on both sides of what the representation.
And that's what makes this movie really good. It's like put your sword down. They're gonna make fun of everyone.
Yeah. Yeah, if it was truly a message film, I might not have enjoyed it as much, but you could find a message wherever you're looking for it, I guess.
Well, I can do that easy.
Yeah. Yeah. So one of our killers, one of our hunters, goes out to take a leak, and is quickly has his throat slit by Crystal, and then the pig that was released out of the box is dropped into the bunker. And these idiots get scared, and they all start shooting it repeatedly, like from all directions. And it's just
the one guy there, he's the military consultant. He was on the movie Tears from the Sun.
Yes.
Tears of the Sun with Bruce Willis. He's like, Bruce Willis was in it.
You're like, oh yeah, I like Bruce. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we come to find out he wasn't quite the military expert he claimed, but
right. He was Coast Guard. As his dying words, I was Coast Guard, and she's like, oh.
They go in and
so they make fun of Coast Guard people too, by the way.
Yeah,
so
yeah. They so while they're all gathering themselves from shooting this pig over and over, Crystal surprises them, and she kills them all. And there's some good fights in there. She shoots some, and she picks up an arrow off the ground and stabs another. And it's just she's a badass.
Yeah.
And then a voice comes on the radio. And I thought this was kind of clever because Don, he comes in after she did all the work, and the voice on the radio comes off and then calls for Don and says, "Hey, Don, did you get her? Is she dead?" And immediately creates distrust between Crystal and Don. To the best of their knowledge, they were on the same side in this,
and even to the audience, because even I'm like, oh no, another twist, right?
And she said everybody's lying. So we don't ever actually find out if this is true or not, but it was a brilliant act of creating this mistrust. So they end up in a standoff, and just drop your gun. No, you drop your gun. Just drop your gun. And of course, Crystal is the badass.
She's the quicker gun. Yeah.
Yeah. So she ends up shooting Don.
Yeah.
The voice on the radio says to come get her. And then we go back to our text chain at the beginning. It's 1 year earlier. And the character who we've only seen from behind in glimpses is Athena. She seems to be the head of this whole thing.
It's the great Hillary Swank.
Yes.
Yeah.
She is confronted at her job about the text chain, and she's a bigwig. She's a CEO of a big company. She's wealthy. She gets confronted about it and loses her job over it. And she's like, it was a joke. She's like, no, people already out there believe this. There's already all these rumors, and you're just feeding into it. You know, the board's already talked about it. It can't fly. So now her and all the people from the text messages, who are all the people we just saw killed in the bunker, they all meet as a group, including the old couple from the mom and pa grocery, and they're going through and selecting people for the hunt.
And one of the girls, the lady, it's with the cashier, the mom and pop husband and wife are there. They're two of these people. And the woman has a really good line. She says, "We need to lean into stereotypes and let people expose their biases." I was like, yeah, that's kind of what a lot of this weaponized stuff does, right?
Yeah. And it was, they're going through, oh, what did this person do? And they're rating them on, one of the guys who was killed was a hunter, and he shoots big game, and he posts pictures about it. And they're like, he's an 8 on the killable scale.
Yeah. Well, they're looking for all the people that wrote about the rumors. They want to kill all the people that made that were contributing to the rumors online, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So your online profile, I guess, can hurt you. So we find that out, and so that's how the hunt came to be. Athena lets Crystal into the manor, and there's pictures of the hunted on the wall. Like they had posted a picture of all the people they captured. And she goes in, and Athena's in the kitchen, and she's making a grilled cheese, and she starts speeching and preaching, and she's talking about all the people and she's basically blaming the people who believed in the hunt for causing the hunt. Like, you made this happen. Your rumors, your lies.
She also said, she said something that's really interesting. She's sitting there listening to classical music, and she's making a grilled cheese. And she says, people go their whole lives never knowing to cut tomatoes with a bread knife. And I was like, wait, is that true?
It is true.
Is it? I didn't even know that.
It is true. Absolutely. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
I learned something new watching this movie.
And she also recommends Gruyere for grilled cheese instead of cheddar, which is debatable to me, but
that's very debatable.
Personal preference.
Yeah.
But she's having this philosophical discussion about, the right and wrong and what people post. And it's very, very pretentious. And so it just quickly turns, she tells her about, oh, I know who you are. You did this, your father did this. And Crystal says, you got the wrong Crystal. Like, that's not me. And she doesn't believe her.
Well, and then you have to think, because she said, Crystal, the whole movie's been saying everyone's lying. So, like, is it her turn? So, like, even now we're kind of going, wait a second.
Right, exactly.
You're playing a game,
No, you'd think one thing you'd want to know if you're selecting these candidates, you'd want to know their background and their ability to kick your ass back. And they obviously didn't do a good check on her.
No, yeah, they might have got the wrong person. They messed with the wrong person that day.
So then they have a long, very good fight scene. It's very reminiscent of Kill Bill.
I thought the same thing. Yeah, I was trying as hard as I could not to mention Kill Bill while reviewing this movie, but I think it's impossible.
It was hard to, for the simple fact, and it's the very specific with the kitchen fight when she goes to her first retribution that we see in the film. Yeah,
with the cereal in the box, in the gun, in the cereal box.
Yeah. Kaboom was the cereal, which I love that kind of stuff. But it was very reminiscent of that, in that it was intense. It was high impact. They're both wailing the crap out of each other.
Great choreography. Yeah, it was just yep. There's actually a comedic part where they're outside and Crystal goes to throw Athena through a window, and she goes, "No more glass." And they say, "Okay," and they walk through the door,
and she pushes the door open instead of throwing her through.
Yeah.
So
this movie was way better than I thought it was going to be.
The humor never really stops.
It doesn't.
Athena ends up, she pinches in one of the. It bothered me for some reason, but she cocks their shot. She gets a hold of a shotgun and she cocks it, and they're fighting. And she tries to close it and pinches the skin of Crystal's arm in it and is holding it. And for some reason, that to me was worse than getting stabbed. That just seemed so awful to me.
That looked really painful, because then you can think about like any part of your like body getting pinched and clamped onto something you can't get out. Ouch.
Yeah. Crystal, she gets stabbed. She falls from the stairs down into crashes through the coffee table,
and she's wheezing, which I really liked. When she gets like her back hits that table and crashes down, when she gets up, she's wheezing really hard, like you would. Yeah. Like if you would, you know what I mean? Like if you slip and fall and do that. Like I thought the acting in this was really good. It wasn't like she just got up like an action star and kept going. Like, they
like
show
it was
her
nothing.
They show her wheezing real hard.
It was impactful, right?
Yeah.
She gets up and they continue to fight. The fight's a long scene. And it's
like a 10-minute scene.
Finally gets her with a food processor blade in the gut. And she stabbed her with something else in the shoulder at the same time.
I think it was like a knife or something.
It was a cheese knife, or it might have been a corkscrew or something. It was quick cut, but she got it, and it appears that she's going to win this fight. And finally, Crystal grabs her and pulls her into her like a bear hug. And the blades that are sticking out of her stomach rip into Athena's gut.
And just before that, Athena was like, "I got you." And then she turns around and gets her.
And they both are laying on the ground. They're both badly hurt. And this is where they start discussing Orwell's Animal Farm. And Crystal references it and explains why her designation didn't make sense, because that character believed this and this and this. And it was so funny that Athena was like, "Wait, you've read Animal Farm?" And that one line to me sums up the preconceived notions people have about each other, when you're talking about this class structure.
Yeah, which is what I said in the beginning. You can't make assumptions on someone's moral worth based off their economic standing, right? Like that's, yeah.
Yeah, and that one line and the look on Hilary Swank's face, she was just shocked that she had the education or the comprehension of this story. So that was kind of a cool scene. Yeah. And she does confirm, as she thinks they're both going to die, that she was not the Crystal they meant to grab. There's another girl in her town with the same name, and it was slightly spelled different. And Athena says, "Whoops," and
then dies.
Yeah. Crystal manages to get up, and she eats the grilled cheese, which is a good move.
She sees the rabbit, because she tells the story earlier about the tortoise and the hare. Yes. About her mother used to, and so she looks over and she sees the rabbit, and she's like, "No way!" And like that kind of gives her energy to kind of get up, and then she eats the grilled cheese.
Eats the grilled cheese, which you don't waste a grilled cheese.
No, that looked good too. I was like,
it did look good. And she uses the flame device in the kitchen to I can't remember what those are called.
She cauterizes
her cut, and she cleans up and puts on one of Athena's nice dresses, and she goes out and boards the private plane.
And takes the dog. She takes that nice dog too.
Oh, that dog, yeah.
Yeah.
She boards the private plane and demands to be taken home. And she's, "Is that going to be a problem?" And the captain's like, "Not at all. Let's go."
Yeah. She tells him, she's like, "Listen, the people that were supposed to kill me, I've killed all of your employees, all the people that employed you. So it's just me left. So just take me home." And they're like, the guy's like, "Yes, ma'am."
"No problem. Let's go."
Yep. Let's go.
So she sits, and we see the flight attendant that we saw on the initial flight there. And they have kind of a parallel scene where they're talking about caviar. And the rich guy was very like, "Oh, you never had caviar?" He's like, "Well, I had it last night." And Crystal's like, "Oh, have you ever had caviar?" And she's like, no. She's like, me neither. She's like, well, let's have some.
Sit
She's
down.
like,
Yeah.
she's like, I don't think I'm allowed. She's like, you are now. And you know, there's just another parallel to how the servant was treated by the rich person.
And how she's treated as a normal person when she gets on. Yeah. They
An
kind of
equal.
have a drink together. Yeah. An equal. Yeah. And then she
Yeah.
sits there and chugs the $250,000 champagne. She's like, that's actually pretty good.
Yeah. So unfortunately, like we said, this movie got pushed from 2019 release into March of 2020, which put it squarely in the COVID crosshairs. So
Yeah.
really didn't make a lot of money. People weren't able to go to the theaters. I think it had a budget of 14 million and it made like 13 million.
Yeah. Which is a shame because this movie's awesome. I highly recommend it to everyone.
Yeah. It was heavily criticized for the violence and the politics of it. And I always think it's funny when you're criticized by both sides, you're doing something right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I agree.
It's funny, it's violent, it's nothing you would take seriously, but there are messages in there about classism, cancel culture, political affiliations, and certainly violence, but it's never heavy-handed. I don't think it pushes an agenda or one perspective on you. And it's so satirical in its approach that it keeps it lighthearted.
Yeah, you can't take this movie serious at all. Anyone who took this movie serious, I don't know, like they watched it the wrong way. It's a very entertaining movie, like you said. And I think the main actress for Crystal, I actually really, really, really liked her character. I thought her acting was really unique, like for the approach that she took. I enjoyed every scene of this movie.
Our second film under the category Eat the Rich is almost a very literal definition of eat because it's The Menu from 2022, directed by Mark Mylod. And this is a tongue-in-cheek dark comedy thriller, and it's about classism, elitism, and some of the over-the-top ridiculousness that the extreme wealthy can exhibit at times. And ultimately, this becomes a tale of revenge. Interesting concept here.
Yeah, there's actually two tales of revenge in this movie, which is interesting. There's you have like the restaurant versus like the critics, and then you have the two characters that we deal with for most part of the movie, where there's some kind of conflict in class between them that we find out later on, which I think is a really good meta narrative. They kind of like put that in there. And it's what I like about this movie is that they kind of took like the whole death house, like hostel Saw type like scenario, like you're trapped in this house, like, but they made it a restaurant, and I thought that was really unique.
Yeah, it was. I had seen this when it first came out, and I said, "Oh, that's pretty good." Didn't But then upon rewatching it with a closer attention to detail, I really enjoyed this movie. I thought it's very, very well done, and certainly extremely well acted.
Yeah, it's very well acted. It's a good script. The cinematography is real sharp and tight. It's not like all over the place. All the scenes are real tight. And I thought it was really funny that Will Ferrell was one of the producers on this movie. I don't know why that was funny to me. I was just like, he was involved in this movie.
I watched a movie earlier this week that was not a comedy at all, and Will Ferrell was a producer on it. And like he's producing a lot of stuff these days. Good for him.
Yeah, very good for him.
Our movie starts with Tyler and his date Margot. They're traveling on a private boat to a private island restaurant called Hawthorne for an exclusive invitation-only dinner by chef Julian Slowick. And we see other guests. There's a food critic, Lillian, and her editor, a rich couple, Richard and Anne, a kind of a washed-up movie star, George, with his assistant, and then a group of three investors who are the stereotypical young, cocky, wealthy, just real douchey the whole entire time. Just awful people.
Yeah, they're all awful. They're just narcissistic, full of themselves, think their opinion is better than everyone else's, just real pretentious.
And you immediately get the vibe that this is a group of mostly dislikable characters. And we immediately get those vibes from Tyler, who the way he talks to Margot, the way he talks down to her, the way he treats her, he's just very odd, disrespectful at times, and he just gives you that awful vibe right away.
He almost goes out of his way, if you notice, when he almost never makes eye contact with her. Like he'll be like looking around talking to her, like, yeah, you should eat this, and you know what I mean? Like he's not even he doesn't even care that she's there, kind of thing. Like just sit there and eat, like he's just really condescending.
He does a good job with his peculiar mannerisms that you're talking about there. The way he delivers lines and his speech patterns.
His eyes move around a lot.
And his eyes move around a lot. And it takes on better meaning the second time through as you learn a secret that we'll talk about in a while that he's in on that nobody else knows, including the viewer.
This movie's better, I think, the second time. I've seen this movie 3 times now, so this is the third time. And I thought, I liked it more after the first viewing, because you pick up on stuff you didn't pick up on before.
So they kind of establish right away that Margot is the relatable protagonist. And, he talks down to her. They get hors d'oeuvres on the boat, and he fancies himself a foodie. He's kind of a worshiper of Chef Julian, and like just is condescending in all his talk about the food.
And he quotes him a lot. Like he talks about him like he's like some like magician. He's like he's doing like artistically what basketball players are doing. Music, so what they're doing is meaningless. What artists are doing is meaningless. What chefs do is work with the raw materials of life, and they're working on the edge of life and death, just like God. And like and Margot's like, whoa, okay,
yeah,
like all right, that's interesting.
Pretty deep, yeah.
Yeah.
They arrive and the island is beautiful. It's remote. It's very cool setup. Their host Elsa, the maitre d', I suppose. She right away notes that Margot is not supposed to be Tyler's guest, but she's already there. They're not going to send the boat back, but you can tell right away that causes some issues.
There's some tension right there. It's an uncomfortable moment. Yeah.
And we don't know why. There's some exclusiveness certainly portrayed to this,
right.
But she's there, so they're going to move forward.
It's almost like some Willy Wonka chocolate factory. Like only certain people are invited. Who are you?
Right?
Yeah.
She got a golden ticket.
Yeah.
The people are brought in and they're seated, and the area is set up kind of like a cooking show or a dinner theater, where the kitchen is at the front and it's kind of raised, and you can see all the cooking stations, and there's sous chefs and different chef stations working nonstop, and everyone else is down below, and it's really presented like a show, which I suppose it is.
Right.
They get a bunch of rules. No, you can watch the chefs cook. That's kind of what it's designed for. No pictures of anything. And of course,
specifically the food, which I thought was cool, because that's a good, that's a good observation to modern society. People will go to Applebee's and take pictures of their food. You know what I mean? Like I'm at Burger King, like, like you just see that everywhere now, And I'm guilty of it. I've done it too. I've sent someone text you, "What are you doing?" Take a picture of food. I'm eating lunch. We've all done it.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have, but I have.
I have once in a while, special occasions, but I just share it with specific people. I don't post
specific people, right? You're not putting it on Instagram, right?
I do have a good friend who fancies himself quite a chef, and he is a very good cook, and he would spend hours and hundreds of dollars prepping one meal, and he posts a lot of them on Instagram.
But that's art, right?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. But I mean, there's a reason for that, because not to go off too much of a tangent, but like we watch cooking shows, right? Like we enjoy seeing the process of food, the finality of what it comes out to be like. It's like we have a natural inclination to that. So there's also this natural inclination to see like a well-made meal, and when it's your friend, it's like, oh, cool, you're enjoying that. You know what I mean? Like it's so, I mean, I get it. Like I get why people do it. So.
Absolutely. I do too.
Yeah.
Tyler snaps a picture, of course, of the first plate out. And this is designed to be this is going to be many hours. There's going to be many courses. There's going to be time in between. There will be palate cleansing. This is not going to dinner. This is an all-day event.
Yeah, and I think they say, Elsa says earlier that it often goes till 2 a.m., right?
Chef Julian gives what I consider kind of pretentious explanations and discussions before each course, describing in detail. At one point, he says you're going to eat fats, you're going to eat proteins, you're going to eat, at some point you're going to eat entire ecosystems. It's just
it's very it's an intellectual exercise. It's like, dude, just bring us a steak.
His he describes the art that he's created, and it all looks amazing. It's all way beyond my palate, but
beyond my wallet.
It looks, well, for sure, but it all looks amazing. But his speeches are a little unsettling, and with each course they get odder,
darker. I think they get darker.
Yeah. And Chef Julian is Ralph Fiennes, who's an incredible actor, does an amazing job here as he always does. He serves a bread plate without bread. It's the accompaniments unaccompanied, and
yes.
And Margot doesn't eat it, and she's like, I don't want this, and
we're being insulted. What is this? Yeah,
and the chef and everyone else is trying to, okay, I see what he's trying to do here. I get the message. They're going deep into it, and she's just like, no.
Like when you go go into an art gallery and someone duct tapes a banana to the wall, and you have all these like people trying to write about how it's art. It's like, okay, but they just duct tape a banana to the wall. Yeah, they're insulting you. Yeah.
The chef and Chef Julian confronts her, much to Tyler's embarrassment. And so it goes on. Finally, they get to a course that replicates Taco Night, Taco Tuesday, and the course is called Memory. And the chef points out his own drunken mother in the room. And this is where it just starts to get dark. The images on the tortillas are laser printed, burnt, embedded images, and they're all personal to each patron. And they all have.
There's like one guy cheating on his wife, and there's like laser printed pictures. So his wife's like, "Who's this girl in my taco that you went in?" The other one's like financial records that were like falsified.
Yeah,
and it's all this different stuff.
The critic, the food critic, is a picture of restaurants that she gave bad reviews that are now out of business.
And Tyler's is a picture of him taking a picture of the food. So they made that one on the spot, and they're like, "Dude, we told you not to do that."
Yeah, and it's cool because each, it's personal to each one, but there's dark connotations with each message. It's not like, "Oh, here's your baby picture. This is cute." It's all dark.
Exactly. Yeah, it's all dark secrets. Yeah.
Margot gets into a spat with Tyler. They're confrontational, and it's just getting worse and worse as the night goes on. And she goes into the restroom, and she climbs up, opens a window, and gets a cigarette. And the chef follows her in. And he asks her why she won't eat the food he worked so hard on. And they kind of have a discussion about that. And he tells her again, you shouldn't be here tonight. Okay. And then we go to our fourth course, I believe it is.
Yep.
He introduces sous chef Jeremy. And he says, Jeremy's worked hard. He's done this. Jeremy is a good chef. He's a very good chef, but he's not great, and he never will be, and he knows it, and I know it. And this course is called The Mess.
And Jeremy's standing there like front face, like he's in the military, like standing like he's in like a line, like a military line.
Yeah, and they have like a section laid out almost like a tarp, and Jeremy takes a gun out of his pocket and puts it in his mouth and blows it through his head.
Yeah.
And the most
unexpected part of the movie to me, I was like, "Whoa!"
So
when I first saw that,
it's been getting darker and darker. Now it gets real dark.
Yeah,
and people are screaming and people are freaking out, except for Tyler, who kind of chuckles and continues to eat his taco.
Yeah, he's not even paying attention. He's like, "Have you tried this?" And he's got he's not even paying attention to it. No.
And some people are saying, "Well, is it acting? Is it special effects? Is it stage presentation?"
Yeah, Lillian is like, "Oh, this is wonderful theater," and she's like being pretentious.
And I think they're trying to justify it to themselves because there's no way they could witness what they just witnessed.
Right, because they think themselves of being that important. That why would they be brought to this? Right, like they think they're so self-indulgent.
Yes, and they serve a plate immediately after he blown his head off, and the plate is meat and root vegetables with bone marrow, and the critic says, wow, this is actually fantastic. The rich older couple, Richard and Ann, try to leave, and they tell him there's no boat, there's no cell service, and he tries to force his way out, and they actually cut off his left ring finger and tell him he needs to stay and everyone else needs to be seated. So you almost have like a hostage situation here. I guess
Pretty
not
much,
really
yeah.
almost, you do.
You do. Yeah.
The chef
They're
calls
outpowered.
Margot into the kitchen. And again, he tells her she is not part of the plan and asks her which side she wants to be on. Are you the consumers? Are you the takers?
The giver or taker?
Are you the giver?
Yeah.
And she's like, well, basically she gets out of him that they're all going to die tonight either way. And at this point,
she's got 15 minutes to decide. He's like, listen, I'm on a tight schedule with this food. This is an important menu. You need to make a decision. You have 15 minutes.
Yep. A patron, one of the financial guys tries to break a window, and they don't break. They're like flexible. He's just banging on it with a chair. Nothing happens. And the chef starts confronting people about the wrongs that they've done. And the investors say, well, we work for the guy who bought your restaurant. So, technically you work for us. He's like,
Doug Verrick.
Yeah. He's like, an unfortunate transaction, but that's not the case anymore. And they show a light outside the window, and there's Doug Verrick with wings on, held up by almost like a crane device.
Crane, yeah, it's like he's like being lowered. Yeah.
And they say, well, it's not that way anymore. And he's tied up with wings on, and they just lower him into the ocean.
The fallen angel, they call him.
Yeah. And it's like, okay, this is going to continue to be dark.
Yeah, he's like, I'm free now. Like, he's like, you hear that? You hear that? And it's like, everyone's like freaked out. Like, what? He's like, I don't hear anything. He's like, I'm free from that guy. Like that guy. And he's pissed. He was like, he wanted me to change my menu over the years. He wanted me to do substitutions. Like, you can tell the chef has snapped, right? He's snapped over the years. Yeah, over the pressure of trying to please everyone.
Yes. Yeah. He brings Margot back into his office. It's time for her to decide. And we discover that she is an escort. She is not Tyler's girlfriend or date, other than a hired date. And that she had been the rich couple, the older couple, she had been with Richard previously. And he'd been looking at her awkwardly, and the wife kept saying, she looks like their deceased daughter. He's like, no, you're crazy, not at all. Yeah. And we find out a disturbing truth that he was, I can't even say it out loud.
He was into that kind of thing.
Yeah. That was the reason he picked her.
And even chef said, I don't need details. I know a bad customer just like you. And she was like, right.
Yeah, I can tell when someone's in the service industry.
Yeah. I actually really liked that scene. It was really good.
So he decides for her. And of course, Margot's played by Anna Taylor-Joy, who is excellent and suddenly is in everything for the last 5 years.
Yeah. I mean, she's great. So hopefully she keeps going. Yeah.
And she completely takes this character on. She's very believable in everything she does.
Yeah.
Chef decides for her that she should be on the giving side. So our next course, we go outside and we meet sous chef Catherine. And she tells a story about Chef Julian trying to have sex with her. And then when she refused him, he didn't speak to her or look at her directly in the kitchen for 8 months, punishing her for turning down his advances. And then she takes a pair of scissors, stabs him in the junk, and then hugs him. And that was part of the, he knew it was coming. It was part of.
And then he whispers sorry, and she just goes, she doesn't even say anything. She just goes, okay, and just walks away.
At this point, he gives the men a chance to run away. They get a 45-second head start if you want to try to get away. So they all take off, and after 45 seconds, they send all the other chefs to go track them down. Catherine brings the women inside, and the women eat. Well, the men are chased down, and they're trying to get Catherine on their side and say, we can't let him kill everyone. Like, is there anything you can do? the critic starts telling her, I can help you get your own restaurant. She's like, oh, everyone dying at the end was my idea. It's like, okay.
Which I thought was another good twist, by the way. I was like, oh man, this whole thing's dark.
Margot tells the women that her real name is Erin because they just, why not?
And she was born in Brockton, Mass. Shout out to Massachusetts.
That's right. I thought of that as soon as I heard that. I'm like, oh man, I like that.
Yeah.
And the men are brought back in. They're all captured. There's nowhere to go. And the chef confronts Tyler. And we learned right then and there that for the last 8 months of communication between the two, Tyler knew they were all going to die tonight. And he hired Margot because the chef doesn't seat singles. So he needed two, but he hired her knowing she was going to die.
And so immediately, he is now the worst person in this movie.
Yes. He was aware of the whole thing. He was in on it, and he brought an innocent victim just to be sacrificed,
and just so he could try the food. And chef is actually, as evil as he is with his evil plan, even he's disgusted by this. He's like, I'm going to expose you in front of all, like, I'm going to let her know what you did, dude. Like, that's awful. Like,
because
you know what I mean? Like, you knew what the plan was, dude. Like,
in chef's twisted mind, and as you said, he snapped. Obviously, Tyler snapped too to some degree, but in his twisted mind, everyone there deserved this fate.
Yes.
And
it was a plan, like he said, it was a plan. Yeah.
Meticulously planned out. Margot did not deserve this fate. So that's why she's been a fly in the ointment since she arrived, because she doesn't fit the plan. And the menu has no substitutions.
Yes, exactly.
So the chef punishes Tyler. Well, he doesn't. He makes Tyler think he's not punishing him. He's like, you're a good cook. You're into the food. He gives him a chef jacket and writes his name on it, and he brings him into the kitchen to cook. And what he's doing is embarrassing him.
Yeah, he's humiliating him. He's like, "Oh, you're a cook. All right, come on."
And he's sweating, and he's like, "All right, I need butter, and I need
leeks and shallots,
shallots, and then lamb." And
and chef's like, "Wow, he's like, leeks, shallots, and butter. I think I'm witnessing a revolution in culinary arts."
He gets done, and chef tastes it, and he's like, that is absolutely awful. And then he leans into him and whispers, and you see any life just drain out of Tyler's face. And he takes off his chef jacket and he leaves. And it's like, okay, that was kind of cool.
Yeah.
And he tells Margot.
He looks at Margot. He's like, "You're free now."
Yep, you're free. Come with me. And he says, "I need you to go out and fetch a barrel that Elsa forgot to bring in here. It's in the smokehouse." He's like, "Can you go get it?" She's like, "Okay." And on her way out, she sees Tyler in the office, hung himself,
just dangling. Yeah,
just
he sees
dangling
legs.
There.
That classic look from someone that that classic back look of their legs. And she stops to admire it for a second. She's like, "Good."
Yeah,
she's
hard to blame her for feeling that way.
No, because when she punches him in the over the table, even chef's like, I agree with her, right? Like, can you disagree? Like, dude, you deserve it,
right? Inside the smokehouse, she finds a knife, and she grabs it, and she is tempted. She wants to go into the chef's personal residence, and Elsa confronts her there and tells her, "You're not supposed to go into chef's personal residence," and he never asked for a barrel, and she's acting almost like Margot's going to replace her.
Yeah, which I think she says, yeah.
And they fight, and Margot ends up stabbing her in the throat. And she ends up looking around chef's personal residence, and she sees pictures from when he was younger and opening his first restaurant, and the review from the same critic that's in there.
Lillian. Yeah, Lillian's in there. Yeah.
Who really got him the fame and notoriety he now has.
Put him on the map, as they say earlier in the movie.
Yes.
And there's also a picture of him working at a hamburger joint. And he's the employee of the month. He's a teenager with flipping a hamburger.
And what I noticed, and certainly she noticed, is the picture with the biggest smile on the face was when he was sitting there. He was working at Howie's Hamburgers.
Howie's Hamburgers,
and he was employee of the month with a cheeseburger on his
on a spatula.
spatula, and he was grinning from ear to ear. And it was, particularly on the second viewing, it was noticeable the difference in his demeanor throughout the pictures.
Yeah, because all the pictures he looked miserable, like you said, like the soul was sucked out of him. But then you see that one picture of him, he's smiling.
There's also a shortwave radio in his residence, and she flips and calls for help. So she arrives back at the restaurant with the barrel, and the boat arrives, and the guy comes in. He's supposed to be Coast Guard or
Coast Guard. Yeah, it says Coast Guard on his head, on his hat.
Yeah, so he's an authority figure, and everybody thinks they're going to be saved. And he sees George, the has-been washed-up actor. He's like, I recognize you. And Chef says, well, would you like an autograph from him? We thank you for your service here. So George gives him an autograph, and on it instead he just writes, help us. So on the way out, they do this, tense scene where the guy's walking and you think he's going to leave, and he opens the napkin and he pulls out a gun. Like, okay, he's going to save him. And he's pointing at the chef, and he's like, everybody's like, it's him, it's him, it's him, it's him. Then he turns and he points it at one of the patrons. And then
everyone's freaking out. Yeah.
Like, no, it's him, it's him, it's him. And then he flicks it, and the lighter comes on, and he relights the candle in the middle of one of the tables. And it was so darkly funny.
Yeah. I thought that was going to go way different than where it went. Actually, the first time I saw this movie, it really got me. Like, I was like, all right, they got me.
So he's in on it too.
Yeah.
At this point, the chef chastises Margot, and then she in turn confronts him. He starts every session by clapping. Well, she stands up and she claps, and she thinks she knows how to get him. And she starts telling him that she didn't like his food. It's like, not only am I been sitting here all this time listening to your horse crap, like, I'm still hungry.
Yeah, it's like you don't cook you cook with obsession, not love. Like, none of this, like, your sole duty in life as a chef is to make food that people enjoy, and you haven't made a single thing that people enjoy. You have failed at being a chef. You take the joy out of eating, you make it an intellectual exercise, and you cook with obsession, not love. And he immediately takes offense to that.
Well, you can see on his face as he takes offense, and as they go back and forth, and she gets him with he says, of course, everything's made with love. And he's like, no, she says, no, it's not love, it's obsession. And,
yep.
And if you think differently, you're lying to yourself. And you can
this
see
is the
in
night
his
of
face,
hard truths. Yeah.
You can see on his face, it registers that she speaks the truth.
Yeah. And that's really all he wanted, right? And finally, he might actually have one patron that he can finally please, right? Because he talks earlier about how it's impossible to please people, and it's this interesting moment if you watch all the dialogue building up to this.
I thought it was a great scene. He says,
I loved it.
You're hungry? Yes, I am. Well, what would you like? He's like, I'd really like is a cheeseburger. He's like, a cheeseburger? She's like, yeah, a good old-fashioned cheeseburger. He's like, I can do that. And then she's like, can I get fries with that? And he stops a minute and he goes, Julian or crinkle cut? And she says, Julian. She's like,
no, I think it's crinkle cut. She takes the crinkle cut.
Does she take crinkle cut?
I think it's the crinkle cut.
I'm disappointed then. So he goes in the back, and we see him on the hot flat top. He rolls up 2 balls of meat, and he's got sliced onions, and he makes her a beautiful, juicy, greasy, delicious looking double cheeseburger and brings it out to her.
It's the best cheeseburger ever filmed.
It's amazing. And he brings it to her, and he stands there in anticipation of her feedback. And that's what really impressed me about this scene. This guy has brought out these elaborate dishes using devices I've never even heard of, and techniques I've never heard of.
Paco jets and stuff.
And he's obsessed over now, what does she think of this cheeseburger?
Just basic cheeseburger.
And she takes a big juicy bite and goes, now that's a cheeseburger. and it makes him so happy.
Yeah, he almost wants to cry. His eyes like water up a little bit. He's just like his lips quiver. Like he's just excited.
It was so well acted, and even though he's a demented character, you really, through his facial expressions, you really kind of get to the core of everything that's wrong with him. It was really well done.
And not only that, like what an interestingly tense scene for a psychopath chef to serve a cheeseburger to someone he's gonna let live. And it's just the whole thing's demented. You know what I mean? Like, but it's just so well acted, and you're like wrapped up watching this. Like, what what am I watching? Like,
well, and the best thing
works.
is at this point he's not letting anybody live. And she says, my eyes may have been bigger than my stomach. Can I get the rest to go? And the message is clear, and you see him ponder it for a second and he goes, let me wrap it up for you.
Yeah, it's a slow dialogue. Like it's almost like a drug deal. You know what I mean? Like they're like trying to like how do I say this properly? You know what I mean? They kind of go back and forth.
And the unspoken message is that he originally thought you don't deserve to die, you don't deserve to be here, and he says, yeah, let me pack it up for you, and he lets her leave, and he goes to the rest of the guests and says, well, now it's time to settle up the bills. And people are pulling out their credit card and why? What is the point of this exercise?
You guys, you're going to die.
And then he's preparing the finale as a dessert, and he's making elevated s'mores. Each guest is wrapped in a marshmallow vest and then has a chocolate hat placed on their head as they had sprinkled around this flammable powder, and there's graham cracker dust everywhere.
But he says the s'mores is the biggest abomination to the human palate, and I was so confused by that. I was like, wait a second, I love s'mores. And I was like, am I an abomination?
Well, I wouldn't eat any single thing he served except the cheeseburger, so I guess I'm out on
I mean,
the high end.
You taught me something that changed my life. The s'mores with the Reese's Thin, life changing.
But he does say, he's saying it's confection chocolate. It's
all cheap stuff.
But then he says it's transformed by fire.
Yeah.
And the message is pretty clear. He ignites himself, and everyone else just slowly catches on fire, and they become human s'mores. And Margot had
lots of midsummer vibes right there.
Yeah, they're just the whole place is now up in flames. And Margot sits on the back of the boat. She got on the boat that the Coast Guard guy showed up with, and she drove out into the water, and she's sitting on the back of the boat eating her cheeseburger, watching the whole place burn. And symbolically, which I thought was really cool, in the gift bag he gave everyone was a copy of the menu on this fancy high-end paper. And she uses the pretentious menu as her napkin to wipe the grease from her cheeseburger off her chin. I thought it was beautifully done.
It was very well done. And I also like when he's handing out the gift bags to everyone, he's like, you'll find some homemade granola, copy of the menu, and then he says one of Ted's fingers, and like he just adds that in, like we had some good humor to it.
Again, there's some humor in this movie. There's dark twists. It's not an action-packed film by any means, but it's very thought-provoking and very well done. I really, really enjoyed it, particularly on the second viewing.
Yeah, I agree. The second and third time I watched it, I genuinely enjoyed it more. I saw things I didn't see before. I made connections quicker, and I was able to kind of like think about it at a higher level. So it's definitely one of those movies you watch more than once, and you enjoy it the whole way through.
Yeah, for sure. Excellent. All right. Well, that is our episode this week, entitled "Eat the Rich." A couple good examples of class struggle here as we look at two movies from the last few years. Very, very well done. I enjoyed both of them. But we are the Weekly Horoscope. I'm Jerry. That's Matt. And we will see you next time. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Jerry.
Your Weekly Horoscope with Jerry and Matt.